Christ is risen. Christos anesti. Peace be with you. These are the first words of our resurrected Lord. Peace. Who doesn't want to live at peace with those around them? Who doesn't want to have peace internally? Everybody wants peace. No one disputes this. We long for peace, especially when we are overcome by other feelings, feelings of anger, feelings of sadness, and especially feelings of fear. The disciples were gathered together behind closed doors out of fear of the Jews on the first day of the week, right after the Lord had resurrected. They were afraid to be associated with Jesus openly because of what they had done to him. Yet their love for the risen Lord compelled them to meet together, to pray, and to long to see him. So Jesus, in his very resurrected body, comes to them while the doors were still shut, and he turns their fear into gladness with the words, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I send you." So the Lord assured them of their purpose, that they were, in fact, meant to be his apostles to the ends of the earth. And so the Lord grants them peace. Excuse me. And this peace, we know, is not a psychological state. It's not something that we can arrive at through reasoning in our minds. It's not something we arrive at after going to therapy for many years, perhaps. It's certainly not the product of deceiving ourselves and telling ourselves that everything is okay when it's not. Putting on the blinders. This peace that Christ gives to them is the very gift of God. It's not something that we can conjure up. It's not something that we can force God to give to us, but it is something that God gives to us sometimes when we least expect it. The disciples were hiding out of fear. The Lord came and bestowed his peace upon them. And what did he do next? He showed them his hands and his side, the very wounds from his crucifixion, which he continues to carry in his own resurrected and glorified body, amazingly. Now let me ask you this. If someone came to you and said, "Peace be with you," or "Hey, don't freak out," and then showed you a gaping hole in their side of their body, something that's really not proper to human nature, how would you react? Most of us, I think, would probably jump back. Maybe some of us would scream. But the opposite happened in this case. The Lord showed them his wounds from his crucifixion, and the gospel tells us this: the disciples were glad when they saw the Lord. How were they glad? Because Christ had granted them his peace and the ability to see him, even in the midst of seeing his wounds. This shows that this peace is really a gift and not something natural that we can create for ourselves. They knew that this is the very Lord which underwent these awful things and came out on the other side of death, victorious over it. Now, when this initially happened, Thomas was not present. So when the other disciples saw Thomas, after that first meeting of the Lord and the 10 disciples, they told him these things. But he said, "Unless I see in his hands the print of the nails, and I place my finger in the mark of the nails, and place my hand in his side, I will not believe." And so it happened that 8 days later, Thomas was present, and that's the occasion for today's Sunday, which we call Thomas Sunday. Thomas was present, and the disciples were in the room with the doors shut, no longer out of fear, but to join as one, each of their longing for the Lord. And the Lord came in their midst as he had before, and he said once again, "Peace be with you." And then the Lord showed them his hands and his side, and he said to Thomas, "See, a spirit has not flesh and blood as you see that I have." Right? Do not be faithless, but believing. So Thomas, we're not exactly sure because the gospel does not tell us. Right? We call this the touching of the Lord's side, but it's interesting, the gospel doesn't mention Thomas actually touching the Lord's side. The Lord simply shows him his hands and his side, and Thomas immediately confesses. This was enough for him. Of course, the hymnography and the iconography testify that Thomas probably did touch the Lord's side, but the point is this beautiful confession that simply on seeing the Lord, he too was glad. He was granted that peace, but not only that, his doubt had turned into steadfast faith. The Lord first healed the disciples' fear by showing them his hands and his side, and now 8 days later, he heals the beautiful doubt of Thomas, as the hymns from Vespers call it, by doing the same. And Thomas uttered that beautiful confession, "My Lord and my God." That beautiful doubt of Thomas, this is something maybe we haven't heard of before. We think of the doubt as a negative thing. And while there, of course, is a lack of faith involved in that, this provided the opportunity for that beautiful confession. You know, that term we have in the English language, a doubting Thomas. Oh, you're just a doubting Thomas, right? It's really a bit unfair because, yes, though Thomas doubted and he wasn't there present, all of the disciples doubted at one point or another. In fact, when Christ appeared to them at other times, he upbraided them for their unbelief and hardness of heart. All of them, right? So it's really not fair to call Thomas the doubting disciple, right? This is just the name of this this occasion where he saw the Lord's side. And he was in disbelief until he would see this. This is really the lesson, that Thomas had to wrestle with his doubt for a whole week before he was able to see the risen Christ. And Christ granted him the same peace in the form of steadfast faith. Of course, in the Orthodox Church, we have so many services to prepare us to meet Christ at the resurrection through Great Lent and Holy Week. I think if you total the number of hours we spend in church during Holy Week, I think it's somewhere close to 36 or 37 hours of services from Lazarus Saturday all the way through Pascha. And when Pascha comes, at least for me, I know Father talked about it at the Lamentation service, about the joy of Pascha, when it just hits you, right? When you hear a certain hymn. For me, when I hear, "Come receive the light," that's, no matter where I've been at, it's on. The joy switches on. And this joy really is a gift. I'm not causing it to happen. It happens. I feel joyful. And Bright Week, this week after Pascha, is a very joyful week. But eventually, our thoughts start creeping in again. Right? Is this actually real? Did he really rise from the dead? Doubt often comes creeping back. And if you're like me, and the weather affects you a lot, the few days after Pascha didn't feel as joyful as when it's sunny out, right? And even something as trivial as that can affect our mood. So this doubt can come creeping back. And I think it's very intentional of the church to place this gospel before us in this commemoration of St. Thomas on this Sunday, the Sunday after Pascha, to remind us that doubt is not something that's always negative. It can be beautiful. It's an opportunity for us to receive peace and full faith, which are gifts of Christ. To wrestle with fear and doubt are a part of the common and human experience, but today's gospel reminds us that so long as we hang on and continue to seek the Lord like the disciples, like the disciples did where they were gathered, that the Lord will come to us in our midst, in our hearts, and grant to us his peace. Grace comes to us and we lose it, but it returns to us once again. The whole process makes us stronger spiritually so long as we continue to hold on to the memory of Christ within our hearts. How beautiful after Pascha, after we received outpouring of grace, of illumination, and especially to those of you who were baptized, chrismated on Holy Saturday, and very recently, grace has been poured out upon you, a great gift, right? And you might be soaring like a kite, as many of us are after Pascha, right? But we have to hang on. We have to make a conscious choice to believe. Why? Because we don't get to live the spiritual life on autopilot, right? Eventually, Christ disappears from our midst. Why? So that we know that his kingdom is not of this world. That we have received the great gift of baptism as a pledge of the promise of the good things to come. The appearances of Christ in the gospel after his resurrection, as I said, serve to remind us that Christ's kingdom is not of this world, that the resurrected Christ does not remain visible forever in this age. This teaches us all the more that we should hold on to the memory of him and wrestle with our fear and doubt. Again, not through convincing ourselves or comforting ourselves psychologically, no, not this, but through continued prayer and longing for Christ. And this is what Christ says in the gospel: blessed are they who have not seen and yet believe. This could be all of us, those of us who have not truly seen the Lord with their own physical eyes, yet we believe in him. We feel his presence. We've experienced his grace. But then Christ returns to us again and comforts us, gives us himself, gives us peace, and gives us faith. For now, though, let us rejoice in the Pascha of the Lord, knowing that this period leading up to Pentecost is an image of our life in eternity, where the Lord will show himself openly to us, and we will see him continuously. To him be the glory unto the ages. Amen. Christ is risen.